registration, not licensing. We want to caution.
Registration.
Registration,
not licensing.
Not licensing.
My words, not theirs.
It's all in the messaging. I'm trying to use cannabis instead of marijuana, so I mean, we're working on it.
Okay, that's progress.
Thank you. I know. I've only been chided so many times. Yes.
Transportation too? It covers transportation?
Yes. The challenge, quite honestly, and I'm happy to take some Q&A on this. I was at least forwarded some of the email exchange that maybe occurred earlier this week regarding counter views about the legislative reality in Sacramento. It is a tough environment for cannabis, for any conversation in cannabis. I think that post Prop 19 in Sacramento, with the U.S. Attorney's federal crackdown, it has given lawmakers who are already on the fence an out to not support moving forward with proactive cannabis legislation. That's not to say that it's impossible, but we're really going to need all hands on deck as far as how to get this bill not only through the legislature, but essentially signed by Governor Brown.
Would sign petitions help?
You know, anything would help at this point. And I'm happy to say that I think the San Francisco United campaign is a fantastic development. I think one of the challenges, if you ask me on a real politic level in Sacramento, is despite it being 15 years since Prop 215 and 15 years of medical cannabis within California, I don't think that legislators in Sacramento feel any real political influence from the medical cannabis community. ASA has done great work, Drug Policy Alliance, Marijuana Policy Project while they were in the state, but they were all it's not the same as, let's just say, law enforcement, which is known to not only lobby you, right? And this is how Sacramento works, not only lobby you, but also to pour in campaign funds and to negatively or positively affect elections. And in a real politics sense in Sacramento, they certainly know when law enforcement comes knocking on their door and says we're for or opposed to something, what that actually means in a very real sense for them as elected officials. I think that the medical cannabis community and industry has yet to influence Sacramento in that shape or form. I'm hopeful that San Francisco United is one example of that beginning to happen, at least here on a local level, which is do not take this community for granted. And I think that has happened, and I think that's what we're suffering from in addition from the federal interference. Having said that, moving forward for 2312, the next step will be it will get a fiscal analysis and it will go to the Appropriations Committee. And anything right now, because of the budget deficit, just so everyone knows, that has any shape or form of a fiscal effect in the state of California gets flagged to go to Appropriations, which is not a policy review. There's no discussion of whether or not medical cannabis is a good policy, whether or not it makes sense for California. What the question is the investment that the state will make in creating this bureau within the Department of Consumer Affairs essentially worth that investment, right? Is it valuable enough that in a massive budget deficit time, right, should the state of California invest those funds? That's the bar that's being set for anything that goes to appropriations. So that's the challenge that we're meeting when we go to that committee. I would strongly suggest, whether from San Francisco United to any of the efforts that Americans for Safe Access is doing, Drug Policy Alliance, Cal Normal and Dale, they're all doing great work as far as trying to organize people and channel them into having effective political action in Sacramento. But I think people should be very realistic about what the challenges are. The other challenge outside of politics is the pending court cases. A clear line of attack from the opposition to 2312, and probably my guess is also to 1182, Senator Leno's bill, is the fact that the California Supreme Court is still pending decision on the PAC decision. So that review of the PAC decision is hanging out there as an excuse for legislators not to take a position now. And so already one line of attack at today's hearing was the timing's too early. we're jumping the gun. We should probably wait until the California Supreme Court says something before we actually take any action as legislators. It's presumed to believe that decision, the PAC decision from the California Supreme Court, will come later this year. It's unclear as to what exactly that timing will be and or what the end result will be. There's a lot of decisions, as you know, there's a lot of parallel court cases, not only here in California but across the country, that are wending their way through federal courts. I think everyone is assuming at some point, and the challenge with this is we've been assuming this for several years, is that there will be one case that will make its way, right, and essentially call the main question, which is whether or not the 16 states in the District of Columbia that have passed medical cannabis laws have every right to do so. And that is the ultimate question that is facing this issue. It's not clear exactly what that will be, which case that will be to wend its way. But that is one everyone has generally presumed for a lot of years, that it will be a legal and court decision that will decide one way or the other, and then we'll frame the issue from there. Because I think as much as we have made concerted efforts to advocate for the rescheduling of marijuana from a Schedule I substance to something lesser, that effort, as many of you know, has been stymied repeatedly in Washington, D.C., and does not seem to have any grounds for taking off. Having said that, doesn't mean we shouldn't stop doing that, but we need to be realistic about sort of what the landscape looks like for everybody. So there are certainly challenges out there, but at the same time there's opportunity. The one thing that is overarching all of this, at least within the state of California, is the fact is, let's be very clear, Prop 215 is California state law. It is not something, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's been existing for 15 years. And so the question that we are posing to our fellow legislators, to Congresswoman Pelosi, to anyone that will listen, as I'm sure ASA and the rest of the groups have, which is defend California state law. It's not rocket science. We're not asking you to create new state law. We're asking you to defend what is currently existing. And that's a very important message that legislators need to hear. And that is the primary issue I think that we've been engaging, at least Tom has, in dealing with his colleagues, which is we're not asking you to take a next step off a cliff someplace. We're saying, listen, this is actually already decided ground, whether or not you like it. We certainly, and he doesn't like California three strikes law. It is the state law, and people abide by it, whether or not you like it. Whether or not you like Prop 215, I actually don't care, and he doesn't care. It's state law. So actually, let's defend and stand by that. And I think that's a very key point in this conversation as far as a policy issue about what's affecting California. I've kind of dumped a lot out there, so feel free to ask any questions. Yes.
So just, do any of you have questions, or should I start?
I do. Has the bill undergone any substantive change since it was originally proposed, what was it, 2 months ago?
Yes. We have not to date accepted any amendments. We have received many suggested amendments, including from our coalition partners and our sponsors. But that has been a question of timing as to when to accept those amendments. One issue that I'm sure we will look at and probably figure some sort of resolution towards, which is the land use and zoning controls. The one primary pushback we got today, law enforcement in many ways, we don't count it. They're always opposed to whatever, no matter what issue it is, they're always opposed to it, specifically around medical cannabis. The one challenge that we had today was the League of Cities. The League of Cities gave rather strong pushback on the issue of land use zoning controls, because within 2312 right now there is a mandate that jurisdictions must allow MCDs within their boundaries. And so that has received quite a bit of pushback that 2312 would essentially supersede any local zoning controls. We respect that, we understand that, so I think that we're going to be in conversation with them to see how we can best navigate the issue of trying to stop what we're trying to acknowledge, which is the trend within California of jurisdictions banning outright MCDs, with at the same time allowing local cities and counties to maintain their autonomy, which land use and zoning controls are the primary vehicle for doing that, and we respect that. And so there's some sort of middle ground in between there that I'm sure that we're going to navigate with them. But to, those amendments have not been finalized. My guess is that will probably happen between now and appropriations.
So that the floor, it's one MCD per how many residents?
50,000.
50,000.
So, I have a question, sir. Go ahead out there first.
I couldn't be a governor thus far has been relatively silent during the whole federal crackdown. This is the same man who crafted the 2008 Attorney General guidelines.
Yes.
Has there been any contact between Tom's office and the governor? And has there been any sort of indication one way or the other in Sacramento as to what Governor Brown plans to do one way or the other, either on this bill with other legislation or just making a statement in the context of the federal crackdown?
We've been in contact with his staff, his legislative staff, regarding this issue. They have not, in the brief time that Governor Brown during this current term, he's only indicated on a handful of bills in advance before passage what his ideas as far as what he would do has been. So this is not one of those cases. He's held his cards very close to his vest about that. And I think that, at least my understanding to any last conversations with his office, they're taking a wait-and-see approach as to how far this bill gets, if it actually navigates the legislature. That would probably be another question with their office sometime around August to see if we've navigated not only the Assembly, but are beginning to actually successfully do the same thing in the Senate. Our hope is, and we are finalizing this, we've been in lots of discussion and conversation with the Attorney General's office, who, as you know, multiple times has called for the fact that the state of California needs statewide regulation. Now, their office, at least to date, has not officially endorsed AB 2312, but to our understanding, they have been supportive of the effort that we're doing right now. So we are hoping that with her help and her office's help, that can at least deal with and sort of counter some of the law enforcement pushback that we've received from some of the groups that testified against the bill today. But overall, no, Chris, not any specific word from the governor's office one way or the other. The other challenge, as in the midst of actually dealing with this particular bill, along with a host of other bills, is we're still in the process of crafting the budget. And so there's an overarching question with the June election. No one is really sticking their neck too far out in Sacramento on any particular one issue, given that they're going to need to actually pass the budget, and there is the pending revenue measure in June that was really going to define sort of what gets cut and what does not get cut.
Other questions about the bill?
Is that all noise from outside on the street?
That's support for 2312 right outside. That's right.
Can you write a bill to make this a quieter city for us? Well, all right.
Done.
One question here for the long haul. What will it take for us to get a broader base of allies, and B, how do we become part of the official liberal progressive coalition? I feel like we're an orphan issue. We don't get tucked onto the list of our progressive issues. So what will it take for us to get a better base to do future work, more coalition building? We're a bit single issue as a movement to others. And then how do we get the Jerry Browns of the world and the Barack Obamas and the rest of them, the boxers, and even, God bless her, Diane, how do we get those people or their successors?
You're kinder to her than I would be, but yes.
How do we get them or their successors to put us on the list of save the planet, support the workers, civil rights, civil liberties, etc.?
Question.
You bring up you bring up. I actually think externally to the issue itself is one of the largest challenges facing medical cannabis, which is how many of you attended the California Democratic Party convention? That's what I thought.
Last weekend,
Submit a
yeah.
resolution.
And part of that is medical cannabis is not part of the Democratic Party platform. It's not here in California, and it's not. I mean, California is the birthplace of